Zenato. I'd like to introduce you to Cristina. Obviously, this is our second live webinar, so anything can happen. So please be patient. It can obviously be quite exciting in sometimes, and then it could be quite frustrating because obviously we have Christina Zanato, who is in the Bahamas, and you can imagine that their internet is probably not as great as yours. So just bear with us. So I'd like to introduce you to Christina Zanato, a professional diver since 1994. Christina is an ocean and cave explorer, a shark expert, a speaker, writer, and a conservationist, a member of the Women Divers Hall of Fame, the Explorers Club, and a recipient of different awards. She's a firm believer in the power of education and spends her time teaching below the water and above. So I'm going to hand you over to Cristina. Can you all just give me a heads up that you can hear me? Just in the messages, I just need to know that you guys are here and ready. And yes, fantastic, excellent. Thank you so much. Right, Cristina, welcome to the Divermedics live webinars, free live webinars. And I'd like to hand over to you, and so you take control. Thank you.
Thank you, Chantel, and good afternoon. First of all, a big thank you to Chantel and the Divermedic for organizing this. I'm actually looking forward to listening to the next guests as they're coming up for the week, so don't miss checking out their schedule because it's quite a good lineup of people. As Chantel said, I've been a diving professional for 26 years, so since 1994. I am a PADI course director and instructor trainer. I'm a cave instructor and explorer. I've been working with sharks for the last 25 years. Not only I work directly with sharks, but also train people to work with sharks. And I'm a rebreather and a tech instructor. And the webinar, the idea of this webinar came out of the fact of these 26 years I spent with the public, both teaching, but I also spent a lot of time guiding people. So I had a lot of exchanges coming on the boat or in the caves. And I'm going to try to share with you 5 principles that I actually follow still to this day. Every time I don't, whatever it is, a single tank or a rebreather, and I'm ready to go either for a 40-foot, 12-meter dive or for a full cave decompression dive. It does not matter. These are the principles that I still apply to myself, and I try to share with other people. With them, I'll share some stories that I heard or encountered through the years, and also a little bit of my personal experience. The first thing that I came to realize, and mind these ideas, these concepts, we've heard them before. They are in our open water manual, they are in our advanced manual, they're in our technical manual. They've been there. There's been books written about them. I am not telling you anything new, but the problem is sometimes what I've realized is we have these concepts in our brain. We've heard them before, but the moment it comes the time to apply, there's something that prevents that notion that which is theoretical to actually become a practical application. And so through the examples and through repeating these 5 things, I always try to make it practical every time. The first one for me is put in time. When you learn something, and it doesn't matter if it's an open water course or a cave course or a rebreather course or anything like that, we need to put in time. Taking too many courses back to back without having the capabilities of diving by yourself without the supervision and the umbrella of the instructor prevents us from having that hands-on experience, prevents us to have those small little problems that we now kind of like heard about how to solve them, but now we can really solve them or have someone there to help us solve them that is not directly our protective instructor. We need to step out of the simulation environment. We need to basically take our time. I always recommend my students, you do one course, then you need to do the dives about this course. Because especially the skills that you learn, the emergency skills that you learn them, you practice in the course, you check mark them, and then you go diving. And then for a very long time, you actually forget that that emergency is right there in the back of your brain. And you think, okay, yeah, I remember I did that. But then when the moment comes and other physiological issues come up, including adrenaline, heart rate, it's not as it was explained in the book. The rescue doesn't happen from step 1 through step 9. Maybe it starts at step 5. We just remember all of a sudden that we haven't done this in a very long time. The best example for me is Captain Sully, Captain Chelsea Sullenberger. If nobody remembers his name, on January 15th, 2009, he landed a plane with over 150 passengers in the Hudson River, and everybody walked alive out of that plane. And I actually wrote it down. He said that the moments before the ditching were the worst sickening, pit out of your stomach, falling through the floor, filling. But he also said, one way of looking at this might be that for 42 years, I've been making small, regular deposit in this bank of experience, education and training. On January 15th, the balance was sufficient, so I could make a very large withdrawal. That is the concept. The concept is, if you take time, if you do the course and then put in the experience, you're making deposits into your knowledge, into your experience, into your reactions. The true story of this one is, in this job that I've done, I've managed teams from 13 to 22 people. I've hired, I've fired, I've trained, I've brought people up from any sort of level, from advanced all the way to instructors. And in this training, I actually had a freedom to decide how people went forward, when to stop them, and when to send them forward again. So I could decide, if somebody finished their dive master, I was like, you know what, why don't you stay a dive master for a year? And then you can go and do your instructor. But amongst these people, I also had to hire external people. And one of the stories is, I hired this instructor who during the interview told me he already had a little bit of teaching experience. And he had been learning his courses from what I call 0 to hero, which is fine. I've hired beginner divers and instructors before. What I didn't know, and what he didn't disclose, in that in the 6 months that he used to go from open water to instructor, he never completed much of recreational dives. All it was course after specialty after course, and a couple of dip dives. Like, he was told, to reach your minimum 100, do 20, on this 40 minutes dive, go down, stay down 20 minutes, come up and go back down. And that's going to be your 2 dives. So you have a minimum 100. So he came into a busy dive center at 18 to 20 people per boat. And he was absolutely shocked by the experience of having to deal with real divers, to the point that he wasn't even able to recognize a first stage leaking, because maybe the O-ring was a little bit dry in the tank. So that is the concept between this. Is, if he had taken a little bit of time to do dives, the deep specialty that he took, and then did some deep dives for his own entertainment, he would have gained much more experience than just taking course after course after course. Which this part brings me back to point number 2, and I call it muscle memory. So muscle memory, it's a repetitive behavior that at a certain point becomes automatic. But muscle memory also includes the muscle that we have basically in our head. I'll give you a very basic example. If you are out of air through the training and through some experience, you basically learn that you need to go to your buddy in order to share the alternate air source. However, if you have not practiced that, or you're not familiar with that, and this is what I've seen many times, is you might decide that the best way is to go up to the surface. So we need to practice what we've been doing in the course, and we need to do that in a comfortable moment. If something doesn't fit with us, if we don't like that, that is why we actually need to do more. We need to work more on it. Personal experience, physics. I have a literal background. I studied 5 languages. I studied literature, art, history, you name it. Anything that had that kind of studies, that was mine. I never studied physics till I became a diver, and even more when I became a cave diver. And to top off this phenomenal cake, I actually encountered physics in the Bahamas in an imperial system, a metric. So not only I had now to apply physics, but I also had to apply physics in an imperial system. The two combined really clashed into my brain. So what I had to do is study more, read more, research more, try to find people that could explain me to the easiest of levels so that I'd actually absorb physics more. And that was the only way to do it. Another life example that I've had, one day I am on the boat, or I'm called down to the boat by my crew, and there's a young lady standing on the boat, and she has a full face mask in her hand with a hose attached to it. And she would like to attach her to the first stage. So I asked her, I said, you didn't have it fitted before? She said, oh, no, it's new. So I said, have you been trained in a full face mask? She goes, no, I haven't been trained. Which is not mandatory. If you actually look, it's not really mandatory. Full face mask and all of that. But then she proceeds on telling me that she's absolutely terrified of water in her mask. And because she panics every time she has water in her mask, someone recommended her to buy a full face mask, which will prevent her from having that issue with water in her nose. What they fail to tell her is that if your full face mask fails, not only now you have to remove the full face mask, you're out of mask, you're also out of regulator. And there's a procedures to go through to switch to your regulator, pull out your backup mask and put them back on. Like Ed Viestas said, I read a lot of mountaineering book. He is the first American mountaineer to complete all 8,000 meters, 14 of them. Said there are no shortcuts to the top. So this lady had this mask, and it's like, well, there's water in my mask. I really don't like that. So I'm just going to buy a full face mask, and that's how I'm going to solve the problem. It's like, no, you're actually going to have to flood and clear your mask till that becomes a second nature. Because at the end of the day, we only wear the mask in order to be able to see underwater. But it doesn't prevent us to be able to breathe. So we should be able to be that comfortable. The third rule that I've discovered through the years, or through a lot of these examples, is what I call the no, new. I'll give you 2 stories. The first story is from many years back, maybe 10 years back. I was at Tiger Beach. I was on a vessel, and there was this lady on the boat. And the Tiger Beach diving procedures is, once you hit the surface, you need to descend as fast as you can to the bottom and settle yourself where you've been told to settle. Simply because by the nature of the sharks that are out there, including the tiger sharks, being on the surface causes an investigative reaction by the animals. So you have to be able to jump in, deflate your BCD, be comfortable with your buoyancy, and descend. You can't just float on the surface. The group enters. I enter a little bit after the group, and I'm down there watching the group behind them. I was a guest on the boat, but I was also a little bit looking after the guests. And all of a sudden, I'm down there looking straight ahead, and I watched this tiger just looking up. And there was this lady who was basically coming down, and it looked like an octopus swimming through the water, coming down. We helped her. We pushed the shark away. We took her down on the dive. When we surfaced, the lady was on that dive with a brand new wetsuit and a brand new BCD and a brand new camera system. I've seen this many times before. And so one of the core rule for myself is the no new. So if we acquire something new that will change something drastic into our diving, a wetsuit, a dry suit, a BCD, or a camera, which changes the focus of our dive and our attention, my recommendation is use the one new piece into old environments. When I recently moved into photography. I bought a fairly advanced system for me with strobes and video lights, and the idea that I wanted to take up stories from where I'm diving. And primarily I wanted to be able to push this camera through some of the caves that I've been exploring. So taken in the back of the cave. Well, when I acquired this camera, the first dives were in 40 feet of water, out in the open ocean in my wetsuit with my single tank, till I became comfortable with the camera. Once the camera and I were comfortable like that, I moved into a gentle overhead, like cavern with the camera with my side mount open circuit gear. I then added my rebreather into the cavern with the camera, because now my attention is into my rebreather screen, into the camera and all of that. And then after I did several of those dives, I finally ventured into pushing this camera 1,000, 2,000 feet into the cave while doing everything that I'm doing and taking video and basically taking pictures. So the new for me still works to this day. As we acquire experience, it might change. So let's say I'm an accomplished dry suit diver. I'm spending hundreds of hours in the dry suit. And if you're wondering why in the Bahamas, it's because I'm cave diving, so I'm in for 2-3 hours. So the dry suit for me is not new anymore. When I added the rebreather, it ended up not affecting me as much, because obviously I already had that capability with the dry suit. So it depends also where you are in your level. But when I added the camera in the cave, that is what I actually had to do. The other issue with this no new is a little reminder. If we are into this new situation, but we don't have access to something, there's always a pool or somewhere where to go, where to practice. I hear a lot of excuses like, oh, I have no time or I have no money. But at the end of the day, it's our well-being and our health and safety. But not only ours, it's the one of the people that we're diving with, is the people that we're on the boat with. And is the people that are actually taking care of us. Because if we have an incident, we affect not only the well-being of our dive guide, but also of our dive buddies. A boat might have to come back in and take us back in or anything like that. So there's a lot of things involved with that. Number 4, I call it the red zone. If some of you are cave divers might be familiar with this discussion, we present that to our students at the technical and cave diving level, but I do believe that exists, especially in the recreational diving level. The red zone is the complacency level. When we learn something, we are very keen to do the best as we can and try to do everything, and we follow step by step by step, and we're very, very good at not breaking what are the original informations that we've been given. But then as the time passes and we do dive 20, and it could be dive 20 ever, or dive 20 on your rebreather, or dive 20 in your dry suit, or dive 20 under the ice, you name it. But as you progress, and for the most part dives go well, one of the tendencies that we have is to drop our guard. And once we drop our guard, we enter into what is basically normalcy of deviance. So we start deviating from what we learned and the rules that we learned, and we make that the normal thing. Because most likely, for the most part, the outcome has been quite positive. Yeah, I didn't do this. However, the dive went well. So next time when this happens, I'm going to do it again, because last time the dive went well. And chances are the dive will go well as well this time. But it does not mean that if I keep going through that part, the complacency, the red zone, sooner or later, when something will happen, I will position myself in a situation that I cannot solve it. 2 examples. One, I borrowed from a very famous photographer. His name is Marty Snyderman. And when he teaches photography, he says everybody especially when they have their brand new housings, they invested quite a few thousands of dollars into the camera and into the housing and into the system. And so they're very keen into keeping everything perfect and cleaning all the O-rings and putting everything away as it's supposed to. But then there's, a couple of dives where you take the camera and everything goes well, and then 2 more dives. And as the time progresses, we realize that the camera can go several dives without the proper maintenance. And then one day this maintenance flops below the level at which the camera is required to be maintained, and our camera floods. So again, even in a small things like that, which is not life-threatening, but is financially painful, we may enter that red zone. The other one that for me is fundamental as a red zone is the rebreather checklist. No matter how many hours someone can have on a rebreather, it is the habit in our industry to follow that checklist. I'm pretty sure that Captain Sully still followed his checklist when he started that plane that morning. And that is the thing, 42 years experience, and he still started this morning on that plane with a checklist. And the checklist allowed him to have everything in place that then allowed him to do that landing. So that for me is very, very important. The red zone is not just a number of dives, but is a complacency at which we arrive when we think that we're a little bit better. Life example that I've seen on the boat, I've seen professionals whose inflator hose self-inflate the BCD, and they decided to dive with inflator hose disconnected. Which I know if you're an old timer, we didn't even have that. But at this point, it's there and it's a mandatory piece of equipment. And the response is, well, if I have an issue, I can actually orally inflate on a surface. And it's like, yes, as long as you have an issue with yourself. But what if your hands are busy helping someone else? And now you have to ditch their way bill while trying to inflate your BCD, which now you have to orally inflate. So the complacency is, although my inflator hose has failed and has failed 12 dives ago, I'm still on the boat and I'm still using this failed inflator hose instead of taking 3 more minutes out of my day to change it. And that is the red zone of a professional. And you can insert any example of that. I need to fix it. I'll do a next dive. So this is the 4th one. And then the last one that I've learned, and is one of those, and when you teach someone or when you tell someone, they're like, absolutely, that is exactly what I'm going to do. And it's a rule of not today. Not today. Meaning in cave diving, it's called the any. Any diver can call any dive for any reason at any time without any repercussions. And everyone, when you teach them the rule, they swear, of course, what's the big deal? Well, I'm telling you what's the big deal. This is your last dive of your last day in this absolutely remote place for which you paid thousands of dollars, and you really wanted to do this last little thing. Or it could be this is the last dive before a very long time, because you know what, a lockdown is coming up and you're not going to be able to go out into the ocean. And you're not going to be able to do this dive. But then something fails, something small, doesn't have to be something big. And the feeling is, well, maybe I can just push it a little bit more. So when we go diving, one of the most important rules for me is to be aware of ourselves physically, but primarily mentally and psychologically, and be aware also of everything that surrounds us. What has affected our day? What has affected our week? What is my mindset? Now, each one of us reacts differently, but we need to be aware if that is going to affect our state of mind during the dive. I had a guest that's been a former guest of mine many times before, and he came on the island after Hurricane Dorian. We had slowly resumed the business, and he wanted to go cave diving. I've known him and his wife for a fairly long time, so we actually went out and exchanged a nice dinner. And at dinner, I listened to the excruciating part of their losses through Hurricane Doria on a neighboring island, Abaco. Through those stories, the wife very much was affected by the losses, and the gentleman was doing what men are supposed to do, which is basically find the solution, solve the problems, create the next step, how to do all of this. And I have to say, as a dive guide, as a person, because already been cave diving with this gentleman and because I knew his skills, a little bit I failed to really listen to all of this. So this is what happened. A couple of days later, we had one day to go cave diving, and we decided to do a long cave dive with a stage. I knew the gentleman, I knew his diving skills. We'd done stages before. He only been diving 3 months earlier, not a big deal. But when we entered the cave, all of a sudden his technique was extremely clumsy. Something was not in the right position. His buoyancy was out, his awareness was compromised. And so we called the dive and we came out. Nothing happened during the dive. But when we discussed this in the pool of that cave, that is what came out. And again, I'm not a psychologist, but maybe I should have caught that a little bit. He had had a tremendous loss through the hurricane, which had affected him a lot. But because he had to put up a strong face in front of his wife, he had never confronted that feeling, that loss. And the tiredness and the mental strain and all of that, for whatever reason, manifested itself during the cave dive. So we decided maybe next time when we see each other, we'll just do regular cave dives first without a stage. So this one had a good outcome. It could have had a worse outcome. But this is again to say the best thing for that day would have been to say, not today. And I think is maybe one of the toughest choices that I actually put some of my divers through before. I've called many dives on the surface into watching, like the buildup of situation. I've called dives for myself before. I've carried tanks, camera, rebreather to the cave. Some of them are not easy to hit the water, done everything, zip it up and go, not today. And so those are the 5 principles that we have heard them before. I know they're in the books. They're in all the kind of books, from open water all the way. But these are, for me, the one that I refresh every day in the water. Sometimes I tell my buddy, I remind him, said, hey, remember, last dive before the lockdown. But if something happens, not today, it's okay. We'll wait until after the lockdown. And apply those rules to myself. For my safety and the safety of those that I dive with. And those are the 5 points. I didn't want to do it too long. So if anyone has any questions.
Sure that we've got loads of questions that will come up. I just wanted to just mention Bonnie. She went, wow, now I understand why I had panicked the first time in the open water. Everything in my first open water was new and I was so unsure. I panicked. Bless you. That's thank you very, very much for being honest, Bonnie. So we have, hopefully we get some questions coming up here. Dr. Doug said, great job, Cristina. I think you can read it there as well. And one of your mentors, Butch Hendricks, said, this was Cristina, proud to know you, safe. So he's pretty happy about what
Thank you, Butch.
you've done. So, yeah, having a mentor watching you from many years ago to be able to see how you've progressed, you must be very proud. So we've
actually,
got
that mentor, Butch Hendricks, sat with me till 2 a.m. one morning, trying to get me through physics, because I was determined to get through those physics. Back then, we didn't learn 1 atmospheres. We learned 14.7 psi on the surface and 28.4 and so 29.4 at 33 feet and all of that. Again, I was metric, and English was not the best either because it was my first year here. And he sat with me till 2 a.m., taking me through my first physics. Because he said, I was so determined. He said, well, if you're determined, I'm going to sit there with you till you're determined to finish. And it was one of the best examples, because that's what I do with my students. If they need extra hours, I'll sit there with them till 7, 8, 9 p.m. We order a pizza and we just keep going till they want to go.
Yeah, bless you. He's a good man. There's a question, well, actually a statement from Derek Moore. He says, always surprises me how many fail to do pre-dive checks. It's just complacency. I wish divers understood the reason for this. Thank you, Derek. That is a good point.
Very good
The other
point.
one is, okay, Marco has just asked, how important is it, or sorry, how important is in-pool training if we have not the sea? I guess Marco is trying to explain. So how important is it to be able to do the pool training if we don't have an area of open water?
Oh, for new. I think the pool has quite a lot of good preparation grounds when we're not able to access the ocean. At least it gives a confined environment and a safe environment. Obviously, a short direct ascent to the surface or put our feet down, and that allows us to be able to solve or tackle certain issues. When I did my rebreather class, I came back on the island and I was it. There was my instructors at Sorensen and the rebreather person that built it, Mike Young, that were maybe a WhatsApp or a phone call away, and bless them, because I mean they were there, but I had no one to go, how did I do this again? I had few pictures in my phone. So the first time I put my rebreather back together after my course, might be in a week later, I actually went in the pool for that reason before even hitting the ocean. So I think it is important. It is important to refresh our skills. It is important to build new skills. Again, I went with the rebreather and the camera as well. So obviously certain things cannot be adapted. Like, so let's say you're doing a dry suit, dry gloves to go under the ice. Nothing can change hitting a cold water. But by the time you hit the cold water, you might want to be familiar with how your hands feels inside your dry gloves, and how clumsy you are, or how dexterity is affected by your movements or anything like that. So you can still apply that to the pool. And then once you hit the cold water, all that muscle memory is in it. So you only have to deal with the cold water when you think.
Excellent. So Karen has actually asked, however, if divers have paid, it's just jumped up, sorry. My apologies here. Just get, okay. I've lost it now.
Questions, but
okay, I see them. Right. Okay. So how, if divers have paid for a number of dives on a holiday, they are reluctant to not dive due to losing money. How do you suggest we get over this?
How worth is your life? That's my answer. No, it is. It is. I had a lady that hadn't been diving in 10 years. And when I offered a $50 refresher in the pool, everything included the refresher, the gear, just go in the pool, one-on-one with the instructor, her answer was, oh, wow, that is so expensive. And I answered her, I said, well, how much do you value your life? And that question, it might feel a little bit direct, but for those who know me, I am a little bit direct. And but actually, she stopped and she said, oh, you have a point. And so she went on the pool, did the refresher, and actually conducted a full week of diving after that. And I understand it's a different question, but that made her life much easier and her diving much more fun. And so money is tough to lose, but is better than actually risk your own health and your own safety.
So true. Steve, on the other hand, says equipment maintenance is another one. I find divers don't seem to find this important.
Yes, I mean, these are the 5 points that I do as a mental check. And you're right, Steve, prior to the dive. And like I mentioned, is the instructor that it basically doesn't want to spend the extra 3 minutes fixing his inflator hose. That goes into the complacency part. But you're absolutely right. Taking care of your gear before and after the dive is absolutely important in all aspects of diving, even if it's just your recreational gear. And it could be little simple things that very much known for scalding crew that is diving with bitten off mouthpieces and leaky hoses and like broken zippers and things like that, because all of these things will affect the performance when then the attention is distracted from actually having to deal with all the small issues.
Thank you. Stephen Logan has said this is so good. Would be great video to show open water trainees to let them know that even the most experienced people call dives when they feel it isn't right.
It is. If see, and we had this discussion. You're absolutely right. Is sometimes, and I'm guilty of that. Don't get me wrong. We post these beautiful pictures of these adventures that we may have, and if you find yourself being on a pinnacle of something, I follow Becky Kaganshot and her amazing Great Lakes 300-foot wreck dives, right? And so we see the pictures and we see that, and what we don't see is maybe how many times Becky arrived to the edge of the lake after having our trimix and spent all the money and all of that, said, oh, you know what, we're not going to do this dive. So it is a good point. Maybe we should share this more. I share this when I teach. I tell my students, I call dive, I give examples, and I've called dives in real life with people and for people, discuss it together. And this is a trick that I found out. So if you're questioning yourself, if you sit there and you have this question, should I call it? Should I not call it? Should I tell my buddy? Should I not tell my buddy? That is already something that tells you that your brain is going in the right direction, and there's something else pulling you in a different one, which would be time, money, concerns over ridicule or anything like that. But the moment you're asking yourself, should I? That should already be a little bit of not a red flag, but something to make you consider, you know what, I may have to discuss this with my buddy. And if your buddy isn't appreciative of your situation and is not positively responding to your state of mind, then is a very easy, simple solution. Change buddy. Find someone that is understanding of your mental situation. Now, so that it's okay to be a little bit apprehensive. It's okay to have a little bit of anxiety, just a little bit. It produces what we call adrenaline. We know that. It just triggers your focus, makes you better on your exams, it makes you focus on your dives. But there is that moment when you go, should I? Listen to your inner core, because it knows exactly that is what you should do.
Great. So we have Alex Rose. Hi, Alex. It's good to see you on the webinar. Great stuff. Now, Alex has actually turned around and she said that I've just lost it now. Bear with me. Where are we? Right. So often on dive boats, there is a person who wants to call a dive, but they won't for any reason, a number of reasons. What do you think are the most encouraging words that can connect with someone and convince them it's 100% okay to just stay on the boat? Kind of, you've answered it, but maybe you might want to say something else.
Sorry, you're breaking up. Can you ask the question again?
Okay, so Alex Rose said, so often on dive boats, there is a person who wants to call the dive, but they won't for any number of reasons. What do you think are the most encouraging words that can connect with someone and convince them it's 100% okay just on the boat?
The words that I taught my crew, and I always say to the divers that call the divers, that was a good choice. Congratulations for being so understanding of yourself and courageous to actually admit that today is not your day for diving. I think as divers, we need to encourage the person that make a choice. We can also try to maybe say, oh, maybe once you relax, if you want, we can try and all of that. But if the decision is no, this is not for me, and we can see the level of stress rising, is congratulate them on their courageous and honest choice. Support them.
Okay, so we also have one from Chloe Strauss. As an instructor, how do you handle the stigma of being a woman in charge who calls a dive? I've experienced many times pointing out safety issues or calling a dive and being made fun of by male colleagues, and that attitude is absorbed by other divers.
That is a tough question. I think, I'm trying to think, and to be honest with you, I have never buckled under that kind of pressure, if that makes sense. It might give you a little bit of stigma for a little bit, especially when you're young, but then it also builds up a reputation. And that reputation with time is the one that when you call it, then people will respect it. So what I would say is that do not buckle under that kind of peer pressure. And I do understand is there. I've lived a lifetime where I would be on the boat. I would be the only woman crew or diver on the entire day. And I know how it is. But if you stand your ground and carefully explain why and what the situation is, with time, you will build a reputation and a respect. So the next time you call it, is going to be accepted and appreciated.
Excellent. Giuseppe Di Terzi, sorry if I didn't pronounce that properly, Giuseppe. What do you think about the possibility of completing an open water course in certain confined environments? Which characteristics can be considered as an open water setting by some agencies? How much may this influence the newbie's performance? Thanks. That's Giuseppe.
That is a very good question. So if you look into agencies, usually they recommend to dive in a similar environment in which you completed your training. So if I recently was in North Florida and I've seen divers completing their open water dives in a blue grotto, which will be similar, I assume, because I'd never seen it, so forgive me for the assumption, similar to Stony Cove, which is a body of flat, calm water. With none of the effects of the open water. There could be the oceans, the waves, the surge, the surf entries, and all of that. So it is considered an open water training. It gives a card, but then we go back to the first one. It doesn't give you the capabilities. So the agency usually recommend then if you go somewhere where you've never been, let's say you are certified in North Florida, now you drive down to West Palm. And I do apologize for using obviously American examples, but that's my background. West Palm is drift diving. Maybe in between, you might want to hire an instructor, the same instructor you finish your course with, or another instructor to escort you and introduce you to a new environment, because this is a new environment. So that's how the agency accept the training in certain bodies of water. And if you read carefully, they say, we recommend that you dive in similar environments which you're being trained with, which means if I've been trained to wreck dive, for example, in the Bahamas, and this is one of the things I recommend my students, cave diving in the Bahamas, and you want to go to Scapa Flow, again, that is a new environment with quite a lot of differences in the environment that you've been. You might have been deep in the Bahamas, but we can see surface light from 300 feet, 100 meters down. You can look up and you can still see some faint light of the surface. So obviously different psychological effect than going down a Scapa Flow. That again, you go to Scapa Flow, you might want to prepare and then hire someone that is familiar with the area. So that is how I feel about the different training.
Okay, so the next question I think is one of the students, Dina Mint. Thank you so much for doing this, Cristina. Almost as great as being in your classroom. That's quite a comment. That's a lovely comment.
Thank you, Dina.
Right, so we have just a few more here. Okay, from Marco de Panlo. Once again, I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce properly. Is it important yoga and meditation in diving?
I think that is a personal choice. if it's not meditation and yoga, I think maybe divers could look into breathing capabilities. There's actually a seminar coming up, webinars coming up from Andrea Zafaris about how to breathe underwater. And we might not be the ones that want to meditate. Not everybody is built for meditation and for yoga. I love both, and I do both. I use a lot of what it's called visualization also before my dives, the day before or minutes before. But I think every diver could benefit from the basic understandings of how our breathing works and our response works. And if it's not specifically yoga, maybe a little bit of breathing practice. That I would say, yes, it helps, of course. It also helps knowing how you feel. Do a little bit of a checklist for yourself before you go on a dive.
It's a great thing. I know that you do quite a bit of yoga, and we see sometimes the pictures. I think you were built for yoga. Jane, question. Thank you for this. I work as a scientific diver where we get paid to collect data. It is hard to say no or to call a dive when you are being paid. Each dive costs money for boats, gears, etc. So there's a pressure, but this is a good reminder that the data can be collected another day and to know our limits and stand by that.
And it's perfectly good point. We're paid to take people out. We're paid to take them cave diving. We're paid to complete a course within a certain amount of time. But that is where other procedures will come in place. And I'm not here to discuss business about how not to make money the fundamental part of our decision. It has to be safety, our safety and the safety of others. And furthermore, the safety of our equipment and the safety of our boat and the safety of everything else, because it's pointless to go out there and push it to the limit and then actually lose everything that goes around that part just because we needed to complete one more dive.
Thank you.
I've called dives before. I turned boats back around. I've had boats that we are going out. I'm on the boat, and the boat is rising and falling, and I'm looking at the type of divers on the boat, and the boat crashing through the waves. And going, not today. Sorry, guys, we're going back in. And I've had people complaining. I had people discussing with me how they do this somewhere else in the world or this and that. And at a certain point, it's like, I'm sorry, but I want to go home and feel comfortable and happy. And I tell you what, come back tomorrow and we'll try again.
That's a good point, a very good point. Neil Turton, if you are worried about what people will think about you if you call a dive, then there is something wrong with the relationship with them. Either they are poor buddies or you are worrying about something that is not there. That's a good point.
It is a very good point. As I said, if your buddy is a buddy that you can't share the fact that you want to call a dive, then change buddy.
Yeah, I think it's a good plan. Metallica, I think that's in Canada. Women have good intuition. Yes, of course we do. We need to listen to that, stick to our guns and support each other. Of course, Natalika, you definitely hit the nail on the head. We have good intuition. No, I guess that's an all-round thing, but yes, that's true. What do you think about that comment, Christina?
I think we do. In a certain way, I think as women, we may have a little bit of advantage to the gentlemen, because I actually feel for the guys. As much as sometimes women may be ridiculed because we call something, we actually have more freedom of doing that. I think if sometimes a guy calls something, it actually receives more of a stigma than a woman. I know it sounds awful, but a guy will go, oh, she's a woman, she called the dive, and it's kind of like accepted. But if a guy calls the dive, and it becomes even more atrocious for them to deal with the consequences of it. So I actually feel for that. As women, our intuition, but also we have a different, I've seen this teaching shark courses. And I don't mean to, not everyone is the same. But guys, I feel that I have a certain list of things that they have to complete in order for me to go, oh, wow, that was excellent. Where women just come and they're like, well, whatever I can do. And in a certain way, they surface with more enriched experience than the guys because of all the pressure that they put on themselves. So I think as an industry, you actually need to start forgiving a little bit more also the guys when they do take those consideration and make those calls. Even if, let's say if it's a perfect day, but the guy says, I don't want to do this today because I don't feel okay. We need to turn around and say, good job, congratulations on your decision.
Yeah, that's true. You've got another fan here, Thomas. I think it's Simon. We are very grateful for all the dives you called while I was down there. So you definitely have a fan there, which is great. Thanks, Thomas. I think there's just one more person that's obviously, or a couple of people who are writing still. I noticed your T-shirt, which is absolutely beautiful, and I guess that's your initials. Where can we get those T-shirts from? Is there anything else that you'd like to plug? You have the freedom of this webinar that people would like to know more about you.
So the T-shirts, yes, it is. My logo was designed by Joe Romero. He's absolutely amazing, and it's the C. It's a C. It's the shark, and the Z is the Zenato, and it's me holding on to the shark. And he drew this and then sent it to me and said, "It's yours." So last year in January, I founded the nonprofit People of the Water, POW and it was founded to help me and my teammate expand a little bit the work that I've been doing for free for so many years into cave conservation, survey, exploration, shark education, and local people education. And so the T-shirts were created to fundraise a little bit. So if you go on the POWnonprofit.org, you'll find the little shop link, and any of the T-shirts actually bring a little bit of extra money into our nonprofit.
Cristina, could you, I think you have the comments area. Would you mind putting in any information so that people can actually pick that up?
I honestly don't see the comments. I've been relying on you.
Let's see, hang on. Bear with me. Sorry, guys, again, this is a live webinar, so anything can happen.
I have a call to action presentation. Is that not call to action? Is not. I actually, here, type my message.
Here we go. Type my message. Right. Okay. Tillemans, thank you, Cristina. Good job getting everyone back to the important basics. That is so true.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the good questions and the good points.
Clive Andy Lomas, thanks for your time and very inspirational and insightful.
Thank you.
Renato, quite useful. Thanks a lot. Derek Moore, thanks, Cristina. Always good to hear other experiences on what went wrong and lessons that can be learned. Flava says, thank you so much. Samu says, as a regular dive instructor, how feasible you think it is to move from teaching to do coral reef restoration or shark conservation? Where would you recommend me to start from? Thank you so much for sharing your class. And that's Samu.
That's a very good question. It's a long one. It depends. Well, if you want to work as a diving instructor and work in shark conservation directly, then you need to find a place that has sharks. But a lot of the work as a diving instructor towards a shark conservation can also be done from wherever you are or you find your location, as long as you educate the people into sharks and their environment and why it is important. Furthermore, so if you're actually a diving instructor in an area where sharks are not yet protected, is one of the things you could do is work towards the local protection of the animals. It's one of the things we did here in the Bahamas back in 2010, 2011. So there are different venues. It depends also, like what you like, what is your passion. I came here to the island because of scuba diving. It was a series of coincidences. I stayed because of the sharks, and then within a year, I found that also the caves was my next reason to stay. And I'm still here because of because of the sharks and the caves. So I actually turned down more lucrative opportunities or maybe higher end jobs or anything like that, just because I didn't want to miss the opportunity of being able to come out of my apartment in a half hour being cave exploring and finding new places, or in half hour being in the water with the sharks. Those are all things you need to analyze for yourself. What is really, what makes you get out of bed in the morning and look forward to the day? And then once you find that, then you'll find that it's easier to expand into the conservation side also indirectly.
And we do have, right, so Neil actually said 5 rules on a t-shirt. I think that you should create the 5 rules on a t-shirt. It'll be very helpful. I think some people get at some point. Rita said, sorry, go ahead.
There are 5 things that I follow because I just find them, like, through the years, all these things that I heard, this is a collective that came into my mind that makes me go through my days and my dives.
I think it's great. So Rita says, are you going to be at SharkCon Tampa again this year?
I don't know. I don't think so. I haven't heard. Right now, my life is a little bit like everyone else's. So I'm not sure I will be there. I'm sorry.
Okay. Aisha says, love everything you do, Christina. Thank you. Giuseppe said, is there anything you would add to the current curriculum for an introductory training? In case yes, what?
By introductory, you mean like the basic, or introductory like the one-day experience?
I think still relating to.
So if it was a one-day experience, no, I wouldn't add anything. I think the one-day experience has that concept, is to have the people go in the water for a quick introduction to it, just to see how it works, and then truly enjoy it beyond, the requirement of then what is a safe dive. And so a little bit of blissful ignorance to truly enjoy it and see what is the beauty of it. And then you can say, and this is the work you need to do. On the current curriculums, it personally, more water time. I know there's quite a lot of water time, but I would actually put more water time for the divers. One of the concerns that I have is a lot of divers come out of the training, even when a lot of time has been put into it, with a feeling that if they show up on the boat, they won't be able to meet the standards of all the other divers, so they become self-conscious. So it could be maybe a opportunity or a sign on and added on to do extra dive, but not training dives. Are you okay, Chantal?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a live webinar, so I have dogs, and they.
No, I know. I have 2. They're being very quiet. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have a bit of a problem here. Okay, sorry about this. Okay, so Bonnie says your work is such an inspiration. Thank you for what you do. Neil says thought-provoking thanks. Giuseppe says I think he was referring to the open water course. Let me just get rid of this dog.
Here's a word. Sorry, Chantal. Rather than adding something to the course, it is something that I think instructors too should add for themselves. And don't get me wrong, the agency sounds like my dogs. The agencies do exactly, they do say, and I'm more primarily a PADI. I was a NAUI, have been an SSI, but there is a master of learning that is required of students. And a master of learning means that the student needs to be doing things in a comfortable, repeatable, fluid manner. So it is there. What I've noticed, and this is a field observation, it seems that unfortunately some instructors go through the checklist, so it's done once or maybe twice, and that's not enough. So more than adding something to the course, I would like to say something to the instructor needs add a little bit of time and add a little bit of patience. Add a little bit the capability of extending one day. Again, this is not a business conversation. It is still your time, and it still has value. But if you give value to your time, people will actually put value into your time to learn from you. But if you are on a clock where you have to get out of the pool at a certain time or anything like that, then you take away value both from your teaching and from the students. So rather than keep adding to the course, I will just recommend the instructor to add a little bit of more time, a little bit of more repetition.
God.
I don't know, Chantel. She's
Yeah,
been
no,
eaten by
I'm
her
here.
dog.
I'm here. I'm here. This is fun. Must say. Okay. So Jill says this is so helpful. And then, will this be a regular time slot during lockdown? That's up to you, Christina. You can see you've got a huge amount of fans here that want to hear more from you. So I'm going to be cheeky and say, what's our next subject to be talking about?
Well, in this webinar,
we're going to give you another webinar.
That I don't know. So I'm doing one on YouTube live on Monday, but not through this webinar. Sorry, Chantel.
No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Anything for anybody is great, but would you come back and do one for the diabetic again?
I would love to.
That's excellent. And maybe we might actually get some people making some suggestions what they'd like to hear about if they start typing as soon as
That's
possible.
what I was about to. That's what I was about to suggest. If you have something within the realm of my knowledge, obviously, that you would like to hear more about, I'll be happy to share my thoughts. Again, these are all my thoughts and opinions.
And that's really good. So I'm hoping that maybe. Oh yes. So Dina said, can you please give us the info for your YouTube video Monday? Absolutely. If you don't mind sharing it with us, that would be great.
Yes. So the YouTube video Monday is you have no sign up. There is a link on my post. Let me go to my page. And the link, if you go on it now, it only shows a picture. And then 5-10 minutes before it starts on Monday, all you have to do is click on it. And then when I come live, hopefully with a little bit of understanding of technology, I'll basically do the presentation. It's going to be the 10 most asked questions about.
I think Alex Rose has just given us the YouTube link, which is on the comments, public comments. Unfortunately, I'm still commenting on your price between you and I. But I do have somebody who's turned around.
Oh.
No, it's fine. Karen has asked webinars on shark conservation and your experiences, please. Obviously, the woman of the sharks. So we'd maybe love you to be able to talk about that. Maybe even what you did on a podcast with me. Okay. I think. Oh, and thank you, Alex Rose. That is the YouTube link. It's now on the public chat section. So you can actually go to connect on that, which will probably be a good thing. Yes.
Can you share the other two as well?
Yes, I have. Yeah. And then Sue said webinar of how to begin a shark how to become or begin a shark conservationist. I mean that would be interesting. It's what we can do. But Christina, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here, and I think that a lot of people a huge amount of information from you, and I believe that it's been really successful, and we really want you back. Obviously, there's a lot of people who love you, so thank you. Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. So anybody else who's interested in doing and being involved with webinars, we just want to know, let us know. But most important of all, we thank Christina for being so wonderful here. But we also have some more webinars coming up. We'll set a date for Christina again and the subject. Our next webinar tomorrow will be with Dr. David Charash on diet and children, which is I've seen it before. It's a really good one. So he'll be here tomorrow, UK time, 4 o'clock. So all the webinars are UK time. So 4 o'clock tomorrow. On Monday, we have Jill Henneth, 6 o'clock. She's got some incredible stories. And then we have Remainder, which will be in the Diver Facebook group. and the Divermedic website, which is thedivermedic.com, and we have all the schedules for the webinars. So once again, Cristina, you are absolutely amazing, and I'm proud to be a sister with you in the Women Divers Hall of Fame. You really deserve everything. For your time. It's been absolutely amazing. So thank you everybody for being on here. Once again, I think it's a great session, and I look forward to seeing most of you tomorrow with the David Tarash's webinar. So thank you everybody. Good rest of your afternoon, and for me in the UK and my friends in the UK, good night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.